Welcome to Sky Team's People First with Morag Barrett.
Welcome to this week's episode of People First, and my guest is the fabulous Mary Ostafi, who is an executive coach, speaker, and author of Coming into Consciousness, Living with Purpose, Loving with Passion, and Leading with Presence, which we will be discussing in just a little bit. Mary works with leaders and organizations to help them move towards a future where conscious leadership drives meaningful impact and transformational growth. Her mission is to unlock the full potential in people, fostering lives that are intentional and deeply aligned with their values. Mary has a systems approach to executive coaching that's rooted in compassion, curiosity, and strategic creativity, which empowers her clients to achieve alignment and fulfillment in both their personal and professional lives. Her background spans architecture and design, sustainability, nonprofit leadership, fractional C-suite roles, teaching, and urban agriculture across corporate, nonprofit, academic, and government sectors. She's currently based in Oregon and finds inspiration in that landscape and the great outdoors. Mary, welcome to People First.
Thank you so much, Morag. It's so great to be here with you.
I am looking forward to our conversation because I actually read your book in full at the weekend. We're going to come into this shortly. And you'd said to me, don't worry, it's a quick read. And it is. I encourage everybody. I read it probably in two or 3 hours, less than that. But it spoke to my heart. And I know I emailed you afterwards going, oh my goodness, it's going to be an amazing conversation. So listen up, peeps. Grab your coffee, get comfy. This is going to be a good one. However, I do want to start with your origin story. So when you were a wee girl, what did you actually want to be when you grew up?
Well, this is an interesting question because I'm a Gemini. So I wanted to be everything and anything. So if you were to ask me that throughout my childhood, it would change each time. There were points where I wanted to be a veterinarian because I'm so in love with animals. I wanted to be an Olympian gymnast because I was doing gymnastics at the time.
Okay.
I wanted to be a forest ranger because I loved the outdoors. At one point, I wanted to be a fashion designer, an interior designer, constantly changing. I was born curious. And so my idea of what I wanted to be when I grew up was anything I want to be in that moment.
Okay, well, I'm a June Gemini baby too. And I think that curiosity, and I love puzzles, has come through. Yeah. All right, so you wanted to be everything. So I touched on it in the introduction, architecture. So how did you end up in architecture?
Interesting question. So I was in college and I came to the start of my junior year and I hadn't declared a major because I was really enjoying, experiencing different classes and taking different courses. And I just didn't know what that one thing was. And so I finally went to a counselor to get some guidance on where I should go. And I took the standard test and it popped out architect, landscape architect, interior architect, top 3. I said, okay, well, what does this school offer? And turns out they had an interior architecture program. So I signed up and that became my major. It was the first time I'd ever enrolled in any type of art or design class as a junior in college. And I loved it. I just thrived. It was amazing. And it felt like that was the career for me. And so that's how I ended up in that profession. It was kind of random, actually.
As you look back on that career, what really resonates and sets you alive? What was it about that you love to do?
I loved connecting with people at a level to understand what their dream was in a building, in a space, in an environment, and helping them bring that vision to life. So it was really about bringing spaces to life in a way that people would love to be in them, in a way that they would thrive in them, whether it was a work building, like a corporate office building, or an academic building at a university, like how it would bring people together to exist in a positive environment and uplift them to want to spend time in that space. That is what really drew me to the profession.
I love those are powerful words. How do you bring people together? So it's not just the logical, what's the foot flow going to be through and how are people going to navigate the space? But what you also said there touched on the heart of it. What does it feel like to be in this space and how does it help elevate people to come together?
Yes, absolutely. It's a really unique place to be in because a lot of people have a hard time, kind of seeing that end vision, but they know how they want to feel when they walk into that space. They know how they want it to function. And so I had the gift of bringing all of that together in a way that resonated with them and seeing projects come to fruition and clients be able to walk in the door and just the look on their face, it was just mesmerizing. It never got old. It was a really wonderful, wonderful part of my career.
Are you still actively involved in that? Because you taught they're a part of your career, or have you now reinvented and you're on career number 5? So where are you in the letting go of archaeology, architecture? That was what was then. And is it still part of your life today?
It's not a direct part of my life. I have reinvented myself several times, and I think I'm on my 4th or 5th career at this point. I did leave architecture at one point, and the reason for that was I had the opportunity of a lifetime. A year into the profession, I was invited to be on a project team to design a world-class performing arts center and museum of modern art in downtown Madison, Wisconsin, where I was living at the time, working with a very famous architect. And I spent 5 years working on this amazing dream team of people, putting together this incredible building. And after that experience, it was just really hard to go back to the status quo of design. And my interests at the time started leaning more towards sustainability. And I was really curious about, okay, we can design amazing buildings where people thrive and feel wonderful and function and they look beautiful. But how do we do this in the long term? How do we do this with the lightest touch on the planet? So I ended up transitioning into sustainability. But to an extent, I've taken everything that I've learned from that career, from that job, and it still shows up in my work today as a coach. Like all of that was just building blocks getting me to where I am today. So I'm not actively designing per se, but I'm still very much leveraging everything that I learned in that time of my life.
So when leaders are coming to you to seek you out as their executive coach, what are the things that they are wrestling with that they hope a partnership with you versus a partnership with a different coach might help resolve?
That's a great question. And I find that as coaches, you may relate, like we tend to attract people that we resonate with. And so a lot of people come to me because they're in transition. They want to make a change. Maybe they want to try on a new career or they want to move in another direction. And maybe they're not all that comfortable with change. And they see that I've reinvented myself several times. So it gives them a little bit of confidence and courage that I can help them on that path as well. So going through those deep kind of transformational changes and helping people get clarity on their purpose, who they want to be, why they're here, and then how to align that in their career path, in their life path for more harmony and fulfillment.
Okay, well, that brings us nicely to your book, Coming into Consciousness, which you've broken into those 3 sections: purpose, passion, presence, and living with purpose. What's that? Loving with passion, leading with presence. And so what was the inspiration for this great book? I know I say it each week, but I really mean it this week. And I meant it last week too, but I especially mean it. This book spoke to me and where I am in my life. But what was the inspiration, Mary, then behind writing Coming into Consciousness?
Well, to be honest, I started writing before I knew I had a book. It was more of my personal healing journey and reflecting back on my life, and these stories came to light and I relived them, and I kind of studied them and got really intimate with them and tried to kind of pull out the impact and the learnings and why I went through those experiences. And there was a lot of, forgiveness and acceptance and all of these things that came along with it. So I just kind of started writing. And at some point, the title came to me: Living with Purpose, Loving with Passion, Leading with Presence. Like it felt like those were the 3 pillars of my life. And I realized maybe there's something here that I can share with the world. Maybe this would be of interest to other people. And then I thought more deeply about it. As a coach, I'm consistently asking people to show up as their most vulnerable selves and share their most intimate moments with me. And so how could I not do that with them? Like, this was my way of being vulnerable with the world, because I think that balance is really important.
Again, I can relate, because in my first book, Cultivate, I share the story of the CFO I was coaching. And as you say, they show up, my coaching clients, at sometimes the most vulnerable part of their lives. And for this CFO, it was no different. Challenges at work, but also challenges at home. And so we were exploring both. And at one point, I remember him saying, "God, you know everything about me, and I know nothing about you," because I had nurtured that professional veneer of, well, I've got to appear to have everything in control. Otherwise, how can I be a coach or a confidant? And so realizing I can actually crack the veneer and the sky won't fall in has been transformational. And certainly for the 10 years since Cultivate came out, I recognize and celebrate that CFO for giving me the proverbial kick in the pants that I needed at that time to start that journey.
Yeah, coaching really is, it's really a two-way street. Like, every person that I coach, I receive just as much back. And I think that's important to remember, that I'm learning alongside them, right? Like, you can be an amazing coach to someone and you can still be learning and teaching at the same time. And that's the beauty of the coaching relationship, is that there's just so much growth and elevation on both sides. And that's only possible when we're open to it. It's only possible if we fully reveal ourselves to each other. And that takes real vulnerability and strength and courage to do that.
Yeah. So in the book, you open with the chapter, "Be unapologetically you." What does that mean for you, Mary? But what are you also hoping that we as readers take from that chapter?
Yeah, I really hope that people take away, to cultivate the level of self-awareness in yourself, so that you can align your life and your contribution to the world with your purpose. Right? Like, I see this as, consciousness, showing up for the life that you're meant to live, the life that you want to live, becoming the person that you want to be, regardless of the dream your parents had for you, regardless of the expectations that society puts on you, or the hopes that your friends and colleagues have for you. This means really trusting your path, right? This means, really looking inside and deciding who I want to become and leading that life, regardless of everything external that comes along with that, living 100% authentically, unapologetically you.
It's just so powerful. I mean, the quote you use from Maya Angelou to open that chapter is, "If you are always trying to be normal, you will never know how amazing you can be."
Yeah.
And as somebody who has spent my life trying to be normal, coloring up to the lines and a little past the lines, but then going back in, my team laugh, I love risk until it becomes risky. And despite that, moving across the states, much as the way you were moving across San Diego, and then you went back for the architecture opportunity, but it's recognizing you get one life. And how do you want to live it? How do you want to show up in it? How can you, to your description, be unapologetically you, is so empowering. But we don't often share that message. Why do you think that is?
I think it's probably because the society we were born into puts expectations on us from a very young age. We're told how to act. We're told how to look. We're told what to study. We're told where to go to school, who to be friends with, what sports to play in. Like, there are so many expectations on us that we lose the opportunity of freedom and choice at a very young age quite often. And then it becomes pattern. It's just built into our DNA and we don't recognize it anymore. So until we take that step back and really go deep inside and say, well, wait a sec, why is my hair this color? Like, I can dye it any color in the world. Why am I keeping it this color? Or why do I wear these clothes? Is this a true reflection of me? Why did I end up studying architecture? Is that something I wanted to do? Or did somebody else tell me that's what I was good at? So sometimes we need those opportunities to just take a step back in life and have the spaciousness and have the stillness to really listen and understand who we are and then express ourselves as we feel. And so that changes sometimes how we look, where we live, what we study, how we work, where we work. It changes a lot in life, who we have relationships with. And that's what makes life so dynamic, is those changes, right? And so that's what makes life exciting, like coming into consciousness, coming into our own consciousness of who we are, becoming fully 100% authentically ourselves. That is what brings purpose to life. That is what brings meaning. And that is what brings fulfillment.
So 2 of the chapters in the section about love with passion is listen to the signals and trust the feeling, which I want to ask, so what are the signals people should be looking for? How would I know that there are signals that are telling me to choose a different path? And trust the feeling. I know for many of my engineering clients, logic rules, and the idea of intuition or trusting the gut would be an anathema. So just pick at those 2 for me. What are the signals that we can often overlook? And what do you mean by trust the feeling?
Yeah, well, the signals are the things that start seemingly randomly popping up in our lives over time, right? So for me in the book, one of those is the signal of the eagle. I would see an eagle in my life every time I would ask for my dad's presence who had passed away, right? Like I'd start noticing eagles and I'd start relating that to him. And that made me feel closer to him. It made me feel like he was present and he'd show up on these momentous occasions like my birthday. And so, it could just be a random eagle flying in the sky. You can believe that. But if you intentionally call out and ask for something and you start seeing a pattern, you start seeing things that are repetitious, just pay attention. See what that feels like. Not just what you see with your eyes, but when you see that eagle flying in the sky, what does that feel like? And if that makes you believe in something, if that makes you feel more connected to something, then trust that. See that as a signal and see that as an opportunity to feel deeper. And so signals and trusting the feeling, to me, it's very much a somatic exercise. We spend so much of our lives up here in our brains. We're very intellectual humans. And sometimes we forget that our heart is actually running the show, but we get disconnected from it. So the feelings in our body, like pay attention. When I'm not feeling well, where does it show up? When I'm forced to, work on a project that I'm not excited about, where do I feel that anxiety in my body? As opposed to when I just got, invited to my best friend's wedding and I'm ecstatic to go, like, where does that show up in my body? How do I feel that joy? And we can start discerning the joy from the fear, the love from the fear. And when we have that discernment, then we can start making choices to live more in love as opposed to the fear. So that intuition, that inner knowing, it takes time to cultivate. I'm still cultivating it. I think we all are. But it really starts with understanding where it shows up in our body, how it makes us feel, and really listening to that, paying attention to it, studying it, letting it really be present, and trying to figure out what is that message. And eventually it comes to light.
I like what you said there about studying it. And I think that applies not just to the heart and the emotion and where am I feeling it? Where do I carry stress? In my case here. And so if I'm getting stress and a knot in my shoulder again, paying attention to what is it that I'm doing that's triggering it? Is it bad posture at the desk? Is it the project? And it doesn't mean I have to ignore it or even stop the project. But now, to your point, I've got the choice. I've got the power of choice. And we should be that critical also of the logic that tells us do this or don't do that. Be curious and be thinking about, well, again, is that a habit or am I making an informed choice that's going to help move things forward?
Yeah, it's a lot about intentionality. It's like once we have that self-awareness, we can be intentional on how we spend our energy, what we do with our time, where we want to focus. And we start seeing when I do more of this and I spend all my time doing this, I end up completely stressed out at the end of the day. As opposed to if I add a little bit of this into my life, I feel much more open and expanded. So it really impacts how we feel in our body, and how we feel. Our health is so important, and how we feel in our minds as well. They work together. So I'm just trying to make this connection between the mind and the heart a little bit more intentionally.
So what role have relationships played in your career journey and success today, but also what role do relationships play in coming into consciousness?
Relationships are everything. We don't go through this world as, alone. We walk through this world with other people, and those connections are what forge our emotions in life. And so I think every chapter in this book is about a relationship to some extent, whether it's the relationship with me that I was able to go more deeply in tune with because somebody supported me through that, or my relationship with my family, my loved ones, my colleagues. I shared the story of how I met my husband in the book as well, which is one of the most magical, deepest connections I ever felt in an
I heard the background music. I mean, Netflix are going to be knocking. It's who's going to play you in the movie. It was beautiful.
Oh, thank you. I look forward to that movie. That would be fun to watch.
Yeah.
But yeah, relationships are everything to me. And I truly cherish everyone in my life that has helped me get to this point. And one thing that I've learned is not all relationships are meant to be forever. And sometimes we are brought to the teacher, or the student is brought to us, and it's a moment in time, and you have the relationship you're meant to have, you learn what you're supposed to learn, and sometimes it dissipates, and that's okay. And that was a hard lesson to learn, that not every relationship needs to be forever, and it's not a failure if it's not, but we're going to continue to meet people throughout our lives. And the magic is kind of knowing when you meet somebody, when you have that feeling of there's something here, I want to get to know this person more, I have that curiosity in my heart. Why were we meant to meet? Why were we brought together during this time? And it's those questions, it's those deep introflections that really get me excited. And so I think people, relationships, connections, we're all meant to be together. We're all integrated in this life.
So as you look to the future, I mean, you talked there about that deep introspection being one of the things that excites you. But as you look to the future, what are you most excited for?
Oh, this is a hard question for me, because for most of my life, I have been focused on the future. Strength finder, I'm a futurist. It's one of my top 5 qualities. And what that does is it prevents me from being in the present. Right. And so my work now is to try and be more present, to try and fully be present with the people that I'm with, to trust that I am exactly where I'm meant to be, to have faith that the future holds for me what is meant to be. And that doesn't mean I'm not dreaming. It doesn't mean that I'm not thinking. It doesn't mean that I'm not planning anything, but I'm just not living in the future. I'm more open to what is going to unfold for me.
Okay, so as we come to the end of our time together, first of all, let's talk about where people can learn more. And I encourage you, grab a hold of the book, Coming into Consciousness. But where can people learn more about the work that you're doing?
Well, they can go to my website, maryostafi.com. I'm also active on LinkedIn. I'm not really on any other social media channels. So those are the 2 best ways to get a hold of me.
Excellent. And to just sum up, what's the message that you hope listeners and viewers of this podcast episode take away with them?
I think just sharing that the relationship that you have with yourself is a template for every other relationship you have in your life. And when you are struggling with other relationships in your life, maybe take a step back and look inward and see if there's a connection there. If we're not loving ourselves completely, unconditionally, and we're having issues with love in our life, maybe it stems from that, right? If we're not feeling worthy, or we're feeling judgmental of ourselves and we project that on others, it's probably coming from within. So cultivating the closest relationship in your life with yourself, truly loving yourself, truly being authentically you, that will open you up to much more authentic, deep, real relationships in the world.
Mary, Thank you for the conversation today. And as I say, thank you for the insights and parallels between our lives, but also the introspection that you sparked as I read your book, Coming into Consciousness. I look forward to future conversations. Thank you for joining me on People First.
Thank you so much, Morag. It was wonderful being here with you today.
Thank you so much for joining Morag today. If you enjoyed the show, please like and subscribe so you don't miss a thing. If you learned something worth sharing, share it. Cultivate your relationships today when you don't need anything before you need something. Be sure to follow Sky Team and Morag on LinkedIn, Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. And if you have any ideas about topics we should tackle, interviews we should do, or if you yourself would like to be on the show, drop us a line at info@skyteam.com. That's SKYE team.com. Thanks again for joining us today, and remember, business is personal and relationships matter. We are your allies.